Okay, let's just imagine for a second. Your school suddenly bans all cell phones, like all day long. What do you think happens? Total chaos? Or maybe, just maybe, better focus? Well, we're about to dig into a real-world experiment that did exactly that. And trust me, the results are, well, they're not what you'd think.
So that's the big question, right? Do these school cell phone bans actually work? I mean, do they really help students learn? Or do they just open up a whole new can of worms for teachers and staff to deal with?
Now, I know you're probably hoping for a simple yes or no on this, but the real story here is way more interesting. And, let's be honest, a whole lot messier. This was definitely not a straight line to success. It was more like a journey with some serious bumps in the road.
All right, let's actually start at the end of the story just to see where we land. So after 2 full years of this experiment, what was the final verdict? The headline news is that the ban, it was a success. Ultimately, test scores actually went up.
And yeah, this is the kind of finding that grabs all the headlines, right? 2 years in, and the data showed a real, measurable academic payoff. So, it seems like in the long run, the ban did exactly what it was supposed to do.
But, and this is the really fascinating part, if getting rid of phones was such a slam dunk, why didn't the results pop up right away? Why did it take 2 years? That delay, well, that's the real mystery we're going to unpack.
And to solve that mystery, we've got to rewind. Let's go back to year 1 of the ban. And let me just say, it was anything but smooth. In fact, for a good while there, it looked like a complete and total failure.
Okay, get ready for this number because it's a big one. In just the first month of the ban, student suspensions skyrocketed. We're talking a massive 25% jump compared to the year before. A huge immediate spike in disciplinary problems.
And when you look at it on a chart, it really puts that spike into perspective. You can see the normal pre-ban levels right here, and then, boom, look at that massive jump in the first year. This wasn't just a small adjustment period, folks. This was major, school-wide disruption.
And this wasn't just a 1-month thing either. Oh no. Those high discipline rates, they stuck around for the entire school year. And the impact wasn't even felt equally. In-school suspensions for black male students shot up by 30%. But you know what the craziest part is? After all that chaos, there was zero measurable improvement in test scores. Zilch. Nothing.
But then, after that incredibly chaotic first year, the story just takes this sharp, dramatic turn. The whole narrative flips right on its head. So, let's see what happened in year 2.
And this comparison really shows the complete turnaround perfectly. Year 1, you got it. Discipline spikes, no academic gains. But in year 2, the discipline problems just kind of normalized. They faded away. And the test scores, they've finally started to rise. It is absolutely a tale of 2 very, very different years.
And we're not talking about a tiny little bump either. During that second year, students' average test scores on their standardized state exams went up by 1.1 percentiles. The policy was finally starting to pay off.
Okay, so we know scores went up overall. But the cool thing is, the data lets us dig even deeper, which is always the fun part, right? So let's take a look at which specific groups of students benefited the most from this new phone-free world.
First up, male students. They saw a really significant boost, with their average test scores jumping up 1.4 percentiles. It really seems like that less distracting environment was particularly helpful for them.
And it's a very similar story for middle and high school students. Their scores jumped by an average of 1.3 percentiles. Now, this strongly suggests that, maybe, just maybe, the older students were the ones most distracted by their phones to begin with.
All right, so let's recap. We've got this chaotic first year, followed by a really successful second year. It's a total turnaround story. But that still leaves us with this one giant question. What actually changed? I mean, why did the scores go up?
See, it wasn't as simple as just poof, the phones are gone, so now we learn better. Something else was happening behind the scenes, something that fueled this whole academic turnaround. So what was the secret ingredient?
And this is where we get the surprising answer. A huge piece of the puzzle, a massive part of the academic gain, came from something really simple. Students were just showing up to school more often. The data suggests that a big drop in unexcused absences could explain as much as half of the improvement in test scores. It seems like with fewer distractions at school, students were more motivated to actually be at school.
So let's put this whole journey together, step by step. First, you have the implementation. The ban begins.
That kicks off a really tough year-long adjustment period, full of disruption. But then, things start to normalize. The school culture adapts, and that's when the real benefits, like better attendance and, yes, higher test scores, finally start to show up.
And all of this brings us to the final and maybe the most critical question of all. Knowing that the road to higher test scores might involve a full year of increased suspensions and some pretty significant disruption, is that a price worth paying? That is a really tough trade-off, and honestly, there's just no easy answer to that one.